Flávio Bolsonaro spoke out. About Alexandre de Moraes having sent it to the federal police so that the federal police can open a police investigation into Flávio Bolsonaro for offending the honor of the President of the Republic. And it's interesting because I watched on TV and there are a lot of people talking nonsense. They don't even know what they're talking about. You don't even know what you're talking about, do you? Let me tell you something here. The honor of the President of the Republic has a different legal status than the honor of other people. That's what was stated. Calm down. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. I wasn't the one who established that. It was the criminal law, National Congress. So the one who requested this was the Minister of Justice. Because this type of action is a public criminal prosecution that requires a formal request from the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice went there and submitted the formal request. Then the federal police asked for authorization. Can we investigate this or not? How does it work? And by lottery, it ended up, unfortunately, with Flavito Rachadinha. It ended up in Alexandre de Moraes' office. There are a lot of people saying things without even knowing what they're talking about. And it gets worse. The penalty is increased because it's against the honor of the President of the Republic. I've already told you that the law protects the honor of the President of the Republic more strongly in these crimes. Why? Because he is the President of the Republic. It protects both the objective honor, which is the President's reputation, and the subjective honor, which is his dignity. What will Flávio Bolsonaro have to do? He'll just have to prove what he said now. If he doesn't prove it, he'll be prosecuted. That's the situation. Do you understand? Let's take a look here. Let's go. He made this post here. Lula will be implicated. It's the end of the São Paulo Forum, international drug and arms trafficking, money laundering, support for terrorists and dictatorships, rigged elections. Lula's government calls an emergency meeting after capturing Maduro, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Then Lula's Minister of Justice, Elitan Cesar Lima, went there and submitted the formal request and spoke. Senator Flávio Bolsonaro, a pre-candidate, cannot make this kind of post. He is committing a crime against the honor of the President of the Republic. I want measures to be taken. That's why Alexandre de Moraes, who was selected by random draw, told the federal police to investigate Flávio Bolsonaro. The evidence is material. It's already here. And he spoke out, Flávio Bolsonaro. Look at what he said. He'd been laying low, right? Flávio Bolsonaro had been laying low. He only showed up to respond, then disappeared again. Look at what Flávio said here. Flávio responds after Moraes orders the federal police to investigate him. Flávio says he received Moraes' decision with deep surprise. The measure is legally weak since the publication, which is the subject of the procedure, doesn't amount to a crime. Well, as far as I know, false accusation of a crime, insult, and defamation are crimes. They fit the legal definition of crimes. All the elements of a crime are there. It's there. Now, very possibly he said that because he's a senator. So he thinks that as a senator, with the immunity of opinions, words, and votes that parliamentarians have in Brazil, he can spread this kind of false accusation of a crime, insult, and defamation against the President of the Republic. He can't. The broad freedom of expression that is part of parliamentary immunity for deputies and senators regarding words, opinions, and votes has a functional purpose of carrying out their duties as a senator. He made this post here while he was a pre-candidate. It wasn't even while he was a senator. And even if it were while he was a senator, immunity is not a shield for committing crimes. Then he said it's censorship, that it's this, that it's that, and so on. And I'm already telling you, Flávio Bolsonaro is desperate. He has nothing to show. So the basis of his pre-campaign and his campaign, which will start soon, will be lies, fake news, attacks, right? We remember his video. He disappeared. And he posted a video saying, Lula, people are starving in Brazil because of the Lula government. And he posted a video from Bolsonaro's time, from when people were lining up for bones, of people running after a garbage truck. I showed this to you here. He used a video from his father's government to say it was from Lula's government. Like, seriously, this guy has nothing to show, really. Nothing to show, nothing. And soon he's going to get in trouble with the electoral justice system and even with the federal Supreme Court itself. And it's not persecution. They keep pulling stunt after stunt, and when the blow comes, then it's the communist federal Supreme Court. I'm being persecuted. And Ramalho, is he being persecuted by Trump, maybe? Is he in jail there? There are situations that are just ridiculous, pathetic. And when I look, Flávio Bolsonaro as a pre-candidate for the presidency of Brazil makes me lose so much faith that there are still people who vote for someone like him. They're still saying they'll vote for him. Man, regardless if you're left, right, or center, for God's sake, don't you have anyone else decent on the right? Or rather, you don't have anyone who isn't a criminal? Does it really have to be Flávio? Are you serious? No, seriously. Jesus, have mercy. Oh my God. Meanwhile, there are people whose legs are shaking. There are people whose legs are like bamboo sticks, swaying this way, swaying that way, and then they go and vote. Why? They got screwed. Do you know what this senator will have to do? Beg for mercy. And go to the federal Supreme Court to apologize. And go to the Prosecutor General's office to apologize. And let's see if his apology will even be accepted. Supreme Court justices expect the Prosecutor General's office to investigate any possible abuse of power at the top of the Parliamentary Inquiry Committee on Organized Crime. I explained it to you all in detail. I'm not going to explain it again. This is just a new development, so it doesn't get boring. But Alessandro Vieira's report in the Joint Parliamentary Inquiry Committee on Organized Crime that sought to indict them for an impeachable offense, which I've already explained isn't actually a crime, which indicted, which doesn't even apply. The indictment of Alexandre de Moraes, Dias Toffoli, Gilmar Mendes, and Paulo Gone himself was not approved in the Parliamentary Inquiry Committee on Organized Crime. And now the ministers are waiting to find out what measures Paulo Gone will take. Because according to the Supreme Court ministers themselves, what Senator Alessandro Vieira did is an abuse of power as misuse of authority for an improper purpose. What does that mean, Andre? That even though he could carry out the act because it was within his powers, the purpose was tainted. The purpose was political. The parliamentary inquiry was about organized crime. Of the 78 criminal organizations in Brazil, none were indicted. But he wanted to indict for an impeachable offense, which isn't really a crime. It's about breaches of decorum, lack of ethics, and violation of the principle of morality, which doesn't warrant an indictment. At most, it calls for an impeachment process, which is political. So he made a political report, not a legal one, for political reasons, and this could constitute an abuse of power for an improper purpose, which has administrative consequences, loss of office, ineligibility, civil consequences, compensation for moral damages, and also criminal consequences, including detention. But the big problem here for him would be removal from office and ineligibility if such a process were to move forward. That's the situation. Obviously, Paulo Gone will analyze and study his opinion, the report he made. What is Gone going to look for, Andrea Gonçalves? I'll tell you whether Paulo Gone will take any action on this, whether Paulo Gone will go after the senator or not. What is Paulo Gone going to look for? The intent behind the senator's act? This is Alessandro Vieira. What nonsense is this, Andrea Gonçalves? The intent? Heard it. In this report, he acted consciously and eager to achieve that result of pressure, intimidation, and coercion of Supreme Federal Court justices for a political reason. If the Prosecutor General finds this intent element in this report here, which is intent, then yes, it fits as abuse of power in the form of misuse of authority for an improper purpose. Then the Prosecutor General will file the criminal charges. And who decides on this complaint, Andrea Gonçalves? Guess? Supreme Federal Court. And the Supreme Federal Court will judge Senator Alessandro Vieira, which I repeat is a crime. It's a minor crime with a light sentence, just a jail sentence. The sentence is light, but the consequences, the automatic consequences of a conviction are losing your position and becoming ineligible. For example, in addition, there may still be compensation for moral damages. Did you understand, my dear? Everything will depend on whom now, Andrea Gonçalves? On Paulo Gone. Because it's Paulo Gone who files the criminal complaint or not. And the Supreme Court, to do anything, has to be prompted by whom? By Paulo Gone, and nevertheless, a congressman or a senator could also file this petition against Alessandro Vieira himself, which I don't believe will happen. I don't believe it. Who will have to decide this is the public prosecutor's office, the attorney general, or just let it go? You ask me, Andrea Gonçalves, do you think Paulo Gone will let it go? Only if he doesn't find intent. If he finds intent, he won't let it go. And Alessandro Vieira will be there in the crosshairs, and he will get screwed. Meanwhile, the Constitution and Justice Committee moves up the date of Jorge Messias' confirmation hearing in the Senate to April 28th. Senator Everton Rocha just presented his report a little while ago. And it was in favor of approving Jorge Messias. Jorge Messias was nominated by Lula to fill a seat on the federal Supreme Court left vacant by Luis Barroso, who retired. All right, Luis Barroso retired. A position opened up. Out of the 11 positions, one became available. There are only 10 justices on the federal Supreme Court, and Lula nominated the Attorney General of the Union, Jorge Messias. And he has to go through a confirmation hearing and approved there, including by the plenary of the federal Senate. Otherwise, he doesn't become a justice on the federal Supreme Court. It was scheduled for the 30th, but now the hearing has been moved up to the 28th. What do I believe? I believe he will be approved. He is evangelical, he is conservative. He leans progressive, but he's more conservative, especially since he's evangelical. So, I don't believe he won't be approved. Nevertheless, the PL and Novo Party caucuses have said they will vote against him. Right, Andre? Yeah, because they're the opposition. They want a Bolsonaro supporter, but Lula obviously won't nominate one. But I believe that by then, the necessary arrangements will have already been made for him to be approved as a justice on the federal Supreme Court, where he has the qualifications and meets the requirements. He is over 35 years old, has notable legal knowledge, and an unblemished reputation, which are the requirements set by the Constitution for someone to become a justice on the federal Supreme Court. So I believe he will be approved in the end. Of course, with a lot of behind-the-scenes arrangements until then. That's obvious, and it's part of the Congress we have. Let's take a quick look at Senator Webton Rocha's statement about the report, his opinion in this context. Let's see here. Here, look.
From the information gathered here, we understand that the senators who are members of the Senate's Constitution, Justice, and Citizenship Committee have sufficient grounds to deliberate on the nomination of Dr. Jorge Rodrigo Araujo Messias to serve as a justice of the Federal Supreme Court. This is the report, Mr. President.
The hearing is scheduled for April 28th.
All right, then, it's scheduled for the 28th, and I believe it will be approved. Also, going back to the previous topic about the Parliamentary Inquiry Commission on Organized Crime, where Senator Alessandro Vieira's report was not approved, it was rejected by a vote of 4-6. Many of you asked me later in the comments, I do read the comments, what Fabiano Contarato's position was. Fabiano Contarato was the president of the Parliamentary Inquiry Commission on Organized Crime. Alessandro Vieira was the rapporteur. What was Fabiano Contarato's position? I'm going to show you what his position was. Let's take a look now because it's important for us to see this too. Was he in favor of indicting the Supreme Court justice of this situation that for us was absolutely a coup attempt? Was he in favor or not? Let's see his position right now.
Now, I can't presume the indictment. I can't presume intent. I have to actually prove it. As much as I have my criticisms, I never let myself be seduced by simplistic, easy, populist rhetoric just to play to those who are watching us. Ever since I passed the exam to become a police commissioner, at the end of a police investigation, I assigned responsibility by indicting a person. This act of indictment is an act of great responsibility because you are dealing with people's reputation and lives. And this is very serious. This is very important within a democracy. This is a basic premise within the law that must be observed. For decent people, the simple fact of being formally named as a suspect in a police investigation is already a conviction. It's already a sanction. I can't. Thank you.
So what was Fabiano Contarato's position then? He was against the report from the rapporteur, Senator Alessandro Vieira. He said that it wasn't appropriate to indict the justices of the Federal Supreme Court just for thinking this or that without any kind of evidence. In addition, he said that in the case of an impeachable offense, intent was not established. Because an impeachable offense, as I explained to you, is not a crime like those in the penal code like killing, robbery, or theft. No. An impeachable offense is a political matter. It's a lack of decorum. It's a breach of ethics. It's a violation of the principle of morality. And for conduct to qualify as an impeachable offense, it is necessary sine qua non to have intent, the conscious and deliberate will to act in one way or another. Why does intent matter, Andrea? Everyone makes mistakes. A mistake by a justice, a mistake by a judge, by a prosecutor cannot lead to their expulsion or impeachment. It can't. Do you understand? Because we are fallible. Human beings make mistakes. That's why intent is required for an impeachable offense. And as Fabiano Contarato explained, well, intent. Therefore, there could be no indictment for an impeachable offense because, I repeat, an impeachable offense is not subject to indictment. And in light of that, Contarato took a stand against it. All right? I brought it up because many of you commented asking me. That's why I always tell you all comment. Leave your comment. Sometimes I can't answer you during the live stream because when I'm live, I'm here, I'm explaining, there's a lot going on. But if I see your comment later in the next live, I end up answering. Get the code, my dears. And there's another situation I want to show you. Oh, okay. I told you that Gilmar Mendez got really pissed off. And that Gilmar Mendez said, wait, it's a parliamentary inquiry into organized crime, and they didn't indict anyone from organized crime. And he said, and the militia members, your friends, why didn't you indict them? He said it, Andre. Let's watch this part. I didn't include it in the 8:30 live stream. And we have to show it here now. Pay attention here.
Because, guys, it needs to be made clear. This court has demonstrated throughout its history, including in the recent past, that it does not relent in its unwavering defense of Republican institutions and fundamental rights, always having the federal Constitution as its only guide. Ladies and gentlemen, Rui Barbosa, in 1914, in his speech on the Federal Supreme Court under the Brazilian Constitution, warned that the Supreme Federal Justice, raised as a barrier against excesses, would not escape clashes, political irritations, and the storms of public outcry. However, this institution has weathered these adversities with serenity. And even in the face of persistent slander directed at members of the court, it will continue with the same tranquility, dignity, and firmness as always. When I saw my name included in that so-called list of indicted individuals by the senator, the rapporteur of this case, I said, "It's curious." He forgot about his militia-linked allies. And he decided to involve the Federal Supreme Court for having granted a writ of habeas corpus. But that fact alone, as described, it shows exactly how far we've fallen on the scale of degradation.
I wanted to make this statement because I believe the situation is serious and requires a stance.
And let me tell you something here. If Senator Alessandro Vieira is involved with militias, listen up. If he has something to hide and lives in a glass house, it'll come out soon. Because what he did has never happened in our republic. And I already explained it here in the 8:30 live stream, guys. I'm not saying that federal Supreme Court justices are immune, that they're not subject to facing a lawsuit or being investigated. That's not it. They are, but it has to be done the right way. Who investigates? A Supreme Court justice is the federal police. Who indicts a Supreme Court justice is the federal police. Who files charges is the Prosecutor General's office. Who prosecutes is the Supreme Court. Crime of responsibility is something else that shouldn't even be in the Joint Congressional Inquiry Committee. And Alessandro Vieira did it the wrong way, the right way, or the wrong way. For shady, illegal electoral purposes. Got it? Great. And if he has something to hide, it'll come out. And don't forget about this thing I'm going to show you now. It has a father. It has a mother. It has a name. It has a purpose. It has everything.
It doesn't make sense anymore with all the technological advances the world has had that we still only have one day to rest. When I look at your faces, I see the most humble people in the workforce in this country. The people who serve the most, and often the people you serve, don't even have the courage to say good morning to you. They lack the courage to say good afternoon.
The end of the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule is only happening because this is Lula's government. The income tax exemption up to 5,000 reais for workers in Brazil only happened because Lula is president.
There's no luck, we have commitment. There's only one reason I'm a candidate. It's to make it better. It's important for Faria Lima to know it's not because of them. The Brazilian economy hadn't grown above 3% since I left the presidency in 2010. What I can say to Brazilians is, if you want to choose a president, please choose someone who is very lucky. It's important that we choose someone who is truly committed. And it's not just the economy that grew, but also Brazil's industry. How long had it been since we started having that terrible commercial text about manufactured goods? We opened 518 new markets in 3.5 years for Brazilian products. Brazil has once again become a country taken seriously around the world. Rarely in history has Brazil been respected. Brazil is respected today by Trump, by Putin, and by Xi Jinping alike. We respect others and want respect in return. When has this country had as much credit as it does now? You took the bag to get Banco do Brasil, you get Caixa Econômica, you get BNP, you get FADA, you get BNDES. When you have commitment and when you want to do it, things work out. I would never run for office or have a term just to make things go wrong. My fourth term is to make this country take a definitive leap to become a developed country.
It's not luck, it's commitment. It's Lula. You can be sure of it. It's not luck, it's commitment. It's Lula. That's it. The rest is just talk, just to fool people, to sweet talk the crowd and keep things moving. Hit the like button, like, comment, and share, and take a look at the first comment I'm going to post now after the live ends. Those who like it stay, those who don't, it's all good. Don't worry, don't worry. Much love. See you later. Take care.